Hi, welcome to some Christmas ideas with GourmetQuilter. We're doing 20 different ideas of things that you might want to make surrounding the Christmas season. They might be, we've done some placemats, table runners, we've done some ornaments. We're going to do a little mug mat this time. It's going to be very cute. It's got a little kiwi on it, and that's because I'm in New Zealand and we have kiwis in New Zealand. So it's a little Christmas kiwi. So there is a pattern in case you're interested on GourmetQuilter.com for the 20 Christmas ideas. We are now up to idea number 10, so we're pretty much halfway through. So we've got some amazing things happening already. So this time there's in the pattern, if you're receiving the pattern, you have a downloadable pattern, and there'll be shapes for applique in here. So, and I've done the kiwi facing in both directions because I didn't know which way you want him to go. And he's a little undecided. He likes to go both ways. Kiwis tend to want to do that a little bit. We don't see kiwis very much. For those of you who don't know, they're nocturnal. You rarely see a kiwi. They're very shy, very quiet, keep themselves to themselves, but they're nonetheless. So we're going to do the little mug mat. So it's just kind of like a smaller version of a placemat, a larger version of a coaster, but it's just kind of fun anyway. So we're going to do the little flange. We've done flanges before. So it will kind of tie in with all of that. I might pop it up here so that it's up here behind me while I'm making another one. And so I've already gone ahead and done the quilting. We're pre-quilting basically our fabric and then doing the applique on top of that. We're doing fused applique, and I'm doing fused raw edge applique. So it just now needs to be trimmed. So we could do the applique first, although it's a little bit harder to position the applique quite where you want it. So I found it was actually easier to trim my quilted piece before I put the shapes on. So I've got a nice red background on there, and I might just line this up here with my board. And I think it's kind of nice to do things this way with the applique on top of the quilting. It means you don't have to quilt around shapes. It's a fairly, I guess, quick and easy way to do things. But that doesn't necessarily make it bad. To me, actually, that makes it pretty good. So the quilting I've done is just straight lines in two directions, so that we've ended up with a roughly square grid on it. I didn't measure anything, so not everything is exact. But it works really nicely. I've just used a lightweight, it's actually an 80-20 cotton poly batting in there. And that just sits really nicely. If we're going to use it to put mugs and things onto, we want it fairly flat. So the double lines making the grid works really well for flattening, and with it just being a thin batting as well, helps hugely with things like that. So now I've got my little kiwi shape. He's all cut out. I've got fusible web on the back. And this one's going the opposite way to the one that I've already made. And we will be losing a little bit of the edge with the binding and the flange. However, we can still centre him so that we've got enough space above and below. And he's kind of going a little bit more in front of me. So we want him not too close to that edge either. And then he's got this little hat on because he thinks he's just in disguise. So the direction of the hat kind of lines up a little bit with the beak, but it's kind of non-essential to have it that way. It can be whichever way. In fact, it probably just needs to come forward just a touch. And it's got a nice little white rim on it, a bit like a little Santa-y type hat. And it's got a little white bobble on the end. It might be a pom-pom. It probably isn't a bell because that would be noisy and hard to see on here, but when we stitch it, we can emphasize it that way. So I think that's looking pretty good for position. So I'll just get that all ironed on. I'm going to free motion applique stitch it. So I've actually got a medium grey thread in there. I've dropped my feed teeth. I've got a red thread underneath so that the stitching won't particularly show. And I'm just going to stitch around him now. So free motion, just basically a straight stitch that's created as I move the fabric around myself. So I'm just going to start with this little hat brim. Cheeky little kiwi, this one, I think. I'll just come up here and come around and do all the hat at the same time. And the little bottle. And I can come back onto the brim, and then I can come straight onto the little kiwi and keep coming around. It's a little grey spotted kiwi. There are different varieties of kiwi, I don't know them all. I have to say I haven't ever actually seen one wearing a Santa hat. Until today, of course, this one is. So these little feet are a little bit tricky, so you just take your time doing those, but just follow around each little toe. They have quite large feet, kiwis, and a long beak. They lay enormous eggs, but only one at a time. And we're nearly all the way around. So see, it doesn't take so long to do this sort of applique. It's kind of fun, kind of relaxing. And we've already finished all the applique. So now we can go ahead and finish off making the little mug mat. We're going to pop the flange on. So the flange, so all the information for the cutting and everything is in the pattern, of course. The flange is a strip folded in half, so we've got 4 of those, so we've cut them to length for the sides, and then we've got 2 more, and the fold goes into the centre so that with the raw edges are all level, and we'll put 2 more top and bottom so that that just frames it, and then we're going to bind around that. So I'll go ahead and I'll stitch these on. So I like to stitch these on initially. It's really just a holding row of stitching at about 1/8 of an inch in, rather than 1/4 of an inch. We'll be doing the binding later and that'll cover, but by doing the 1/8 seam it doesn't get in the way of anything else. So I'll go ahead and get my machine set up to do some straight stitching, and then I can do that. So I've already done 3 sides. I'm going to put the 4th flange on, so the top and bottom ones overlap the sides at each end. It's kind of fun with this little stripy fabric. I'm enjoying having a little stripe here and there. So as I said, I'm just doing about 1/8 of an inch seam just to hold that in place, ready for when we bind it. So that's looking pretty good, and we are ready now to put some binding on. So I've already got some binding ready here. I'm going to use this nice dark green on this one. So you've probably seen me do binding before. I'm going to machine it onto the back, I'm going to roll it to the front and then machine it down. So when I start my binding, I like to fold that first corner over, and I'm probably going to do the join on the side, even though it's only a short area for tucking in the sort of last little bit and things. I still find I like to do it on the sides, but it doesn't actually matter where you do the join. So I'll just get started. I just like to stitch it down as far as where that point is folded down to. And I take it out, and then I fold it over, and then I leave a little gap to tuck the other end in. I can't leave too much of a gap because I've got this corner coming up already. So just leave enough that it can tuck in properly there, and then I just start stitching again and do the corners. So I have shown you all the corners and things before, so I'm not sure whether you need to see that again particularly. I'll go ahead and do this first corner anyway though. And fold through the corner and fold it back so that those edges will come together again. And that's so that it leaves this nice little foldy bit so that we can miter those corners. So I'll go ahead and get this binding on and show you when I'm near at the other end. So I'm just coming up to the last corner on the binding here. So I've got my corner folded straight through and bringing it over so that we get this nice little miter there. And pivot once I'm on this next side, do my little back stitch, and then come up here and meet up with my stitching, and that is all stitched. So I'm just going to give it a quick press because I like to press everything. Isn't particularly needed, I guess. But poor little Kiwi, he's just a little sad because he can't see where he's going at the moment. He just needs an eye. So there's lots of things you can do about eyes. You could embroider it with a little French knot. You could do stitch it. You could applique it. I'm just going to use one of these Micron Pigma pens, which are permanent on fabric. So if you're not sure where to put the eye, there is a mark on the pattern, of course, but you can just pop a little, I haven't got any coloured ones, pin in somewhere that you think it should be and have a little look and see whether you think that's the right sort of place or whether you think you might need to move it a little bit. And once you've had the pin in and you're happy with the position, the chances are it's going to leave a tiny pinhole so that you can see that mark, so that you can then come along here with the pen. So I'm just going to mark just a little round dot for his eye. Probably not round dots in reality, but he's not especially realistic. So that was our little Kiwi Mug Mat. So we've got two of them now going in different directions. I think, considering that we've done a nice little table runner, we've used similar colours, these things can all kind of be, I guess we don't really want to match everything, but sometimes we like things to look like they go together. So that was a fun little mug mat that's got a little bit of a Christmassy theme to it. The little red and white stripe really adds to that. And that was idea number 10 for Christmas, and I will see you again with idea number 11.